everyone, welcome back to the English Leap podcast, your podcast for easy English conversation, real daily life talk, and simple listening practice.
I'm Jake.
And I'm Anna. So Jake, quick question. Do you find family conversations easy, or do they sometimes feel a little tricky?
Honestly, both, depending on the topic. Simple daily chats are easy, but certain conversations, especially around sensitive topics, can feel surprisingly tricky sometimes.
Right. I think that's such a common experience. Family relationships are often our closest, but also sometimes our most complicated ones.
Exactly. And that's a perfect connection to our recent episodes, too, both on friendship and on disagreeing politely, since family conversations often combine both of those themes.
Right. So today we're talking about family conversations made easy, useful vocabulary, common topics, and simple techniques for navigating everyday family conversations, as well as slightly harder ones, more smoothly.
This is such a practical, relatable episode, too, since family conversations happen constantly. Phone calls, video calls, family gatherings, even quick daily check-ins.
Exactly. And for English learners specifically, having natural vocabulary for talking about family members, relationships, and common family topics makes conversations feel so much more comfortable and confident.
Right. And honestly, family is such a universal topic too. No matter where you're from, everyone has family stories, dynamics, and relationships to talk about, which makes this such a naturally rich topic for conversation practice.
Exactly. And I think by the end of today's episode, you'll have plenty of new vocabulary and phrases ready for your next family conversation, whether it's a quick phone call or a bigger family gathering.
Before we start, quick reminder, if you enjoy this episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone learning English too.
And tell us in the comments, who in your family do you talk to most often? And what do you usually talk about? Great writing practice too.
Okay, let's get into it.
Let's start with some basic, useful vocabulary for talking about family members and relationships.
Right. Beyond the obvious words like mother, father, sister, and brother, there are some really useful extended family words too.
Sibling, meaning a brother or sister, a useful general term. I have 2 siblings, an older sister and a younger brother.
Extended family, meaning relatives beyond your immediate household, like aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandparents. We have a big extended family, so holidays are always lively.
In-laws, meaning family members related through marriage, like your spouse's parents or siblings. I get along really well with my in-laws.
Half-sibling, meaning a brother or sister who shares only one parent with you. And step-parent, meaning a parent's spouse who isn't your biological parent.
Right, and these words matter because family structures today are often more varied and complex than they used to be, and having the right vocabulary helps describe your own specific situation accurately and comfortably.
Let's add a few more useful terms too. Nuclear family, meaning your immediate household, parents and children living together. We're a small nuclear family, just the 4 of us.
Blended family, meaning a family formed when parents with children. Hey everyone, welcome back to the English Leap podcast, your podcast for easy English conversation, real daily life talk, and simple listening practice.
I'm Jake.
And I'm Anna. So Jake, quick question. Do you find family conversations easy, or do they sometimes feel a little tricky?
Honestly, both, depending on the topic. Simple daily chats are easy, but certain conversations, especially around sensitive topics, can feel surprisingly tricky sometimes.
Right. I think that's such a common experience. Family relationships are often our closest, but also sometimes our most complicated ones.
Exactly. And that's a perfect connection to our recent episodes too, both on friendship and on disagreeing politely, since family conversations often combine both of those themes.
Right, so today we're talking about family conversations made easy, useful vocabulary, common topics, and simple techniques for navigating everyday family conversations, as well as slightly harder ones, more smoothly.
This is such a practical, relatable episode too, since family conversations happen constantly. Phone calls, video calls, family gatherings, even quick daily check-ins.
Exactly. And for English learners specifically, having natural vocabulary for talking about family members, relationships, and common family topics makes conversations feel so much more comfortable and confident.
Right. And honestly, family is such a universal topic too. No matter where you're from, everyone has family stories, dynamics, and relationships to talk about, which makes this such a naturally rich topic for conversation practice.
Exactly. And I think by the end of today's episode, you'll have plenty of new vocabulary and phrases ready for your next family conversation, whether it's a quick phone call or a bigger family gathering.
Before we start, quick reminder, if you enjoy this episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone learning English too.
And tell us in the comments, who in your family do you talk to most often? And what do you usually talk about? Great writing practice too.
Okay, let's get into it.
Let's start with some basic, useful vocabulary for talking about family members and relationships.
Right. Beyond the obvious words like mother, father, sister, and brother, there are some really useful extended family words too.
Sibling, meaning a brother or sister, a useful general term. I have two siblings, an older sister and a younger brother.
Extended family, meaning relatives beyond your immediate household, like aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandparents. We have a big extended family, so holidays are always lively.
In-laws, meaning family members related through marriage, like your spouse's parents or siblings. I get along really well with my in-laws.
Half-sibling, meaning a brother or sister who shares only one parent with you. And step-parent, meaning a parent's spouse who isn't your biological parent.
Right, and these words matter because family structures today are often more varied and complex than they used to be, and having the right vocabulary helps describe your own specific situation accurately and comfortably.
Let's add a few more useful terms too. Nuclear family, meaning your immediate household, parents and children living together. We're a small nuclear family, just the four of us.
Blended family, meaning a family formed when parents with children from previous relationships combine into one household. We're a blended family. My stepdad has two kids of his own, too.
Only child, meaning someone without any siblings. I'm an only child, so holidays are usually pretty quiet.
And twin, or twins, meaning two siblings born at the same time. My sister and I are twins, though people say we don't look that similar.
Right, and there's also a nice general phrase, close-knit family, meaning a family that's very connected and supportive of each other. We're a close-knit family. We talk almost every day.
These words really do give you a much richer, more precise vocabulary for describing your own family situation, whatever it looks like.
I also want to mention a few more relational terms. Estranged, meaning no longer in contact with a family member, often due to a serious conflict. They've been estranged for years, sadly.
And reconcile, meaning to restore a friendly relationship after a period of conflict or distance, connecting back to our friendship episode too. They finally reconciled after years of distance.
Right, and guardian, meaning someone legally or practically responsible for raising a child, who may not be a biological parent. Her guardian raised her after her parents passed away.
These words cover some of the more complex, sometimes difficult realities of family life too, which honestly deserve just as much thoughtful vocabulary as the warmer, simpler family terms. Jake, do you have a personal story related to family conversations?
Sure. Actually, this connects to a slightly difficult conversation I had with my parents a few years ago about a career change I was considering.
Oh, tell us more.
Right, I was nervous about bringing it up since it was a fairly big shift from what they expected for me, and I worried they might be disappointed or worried.
That's such a common fear with family conversations, worrying about disappointing people who care about you.
Exactly, and I actually prepared quite a bit beforehand, thinking about how to explain my reasoning calmly and clearly, rather than just announcing the decision suddenly.
That sounds like such a thoughtful approach.
Right, and honestly, the conversation went much better than I expected. They had some questions and concerns, of course, but because I explained things calmly and listened to their concerns too, it turned into a genuine, productive conversation rather than a conflict.
That's such a great example of how preparation and calm communication can really shape how a potentially difficult family conversation actually unfolds.
Exactly, and I think that experience taught me that most family conversations, even difficult ones, go much better with a little thoughtful preparation rather than either avoiding the topic completely or bringing it up impulsively.
Did you rehearse what you wanted to say beforehand, or was it more about generally thinking through the main points?
Honestly, a bit of both. I wrote down a few key points I wanted to make sure I covered, mainly why the change mattered to me personally, but I didn't want it to feel like a rehearsed speech either, so I kept the actual delivery fairly natural and conversational.
That's such a nice balance, prepared enough to feel confident, but natural enough to still feel like a genuine, warm conversation rather than a formal presentation.
Exactly. And I think that balance is honestly the key for a lot of important family conversations. Enough preparation to feel grounded, but enough flexibility to actually listen and respond naturally too.
Do you think that experience changed how you approach other important family conversations since then?
Definitely. I've used that same basic approach for a few other significant conversations since. A little preparation beforehand, staying genuinely open to their reactions and questions, and trying to listen just as much as I speak. Anna, what about you?
Mine is about staying connected with my grandmother, who lives quite far away and doesn't use technology very easily.
Oh, that's such a relatable challenge, especially with older family members.
Right. For a while, our conversations felt a little repetitive, mostly just quick updates about health and weather, without much depth.
That's such a common pattern, actually, especially over the phone.
Exactly. So I started intentionally asking her more specific questions about her own childhood, her memories, her own family stories, rather than just general daily updates.
That's such a lovely shift, and I imagine it led to much richer conversations.
It really did. She started sharing stories I'd never heard before, and our phone calls became something I genuinely looked forward to, rather than just a routine obligation.
That's such a beautiful example of how asking better questions can genuinely transform a family relationship, even a long-distance one.
I also started writing down a few of the stories she shared, just small notes after our calls, partly so I wouldn't forget them, but also because it felt meaningful to have a small record of her memories.
That's such a lovely idea, honestly, and I imagine it also gave you even more specific things to ask about in future conversations, referring back to something she'd mentioned before.
Exactly, and she seemed genuinely touched that I remembered small details from previous calls. It made her feel truly listened to, rather than just politely humored.
That's such an important insight. Remembering small details and referring back to them really does show someone that you're genuinely engaged, not just going through the motions of a routine call.
Let's go through some common, everyday family conversation topics, along with useful phrases for each. Checking in.
Simple check-in questions like, "How's everything going with you?" or "How have you been?" work well for regular family catch-ups.
Let's act out a quick example. Hey, how's everything going with you?
Pretty good, actually. Work's been busy, but nothing too stressful. How about you?
Same here, just the usual routine. Glad to hear things are okay with you.
Right, simple, warm, and exactly the kind of easy check-in that keeps a family relationship feeling connected, even without any big news to share.
I also think it's worth mentioning even a very short check-in message. Just thinking of you, hope you're doing well. Sent occasionally between longer conversations helps maintain a sense of ongoing connection too, without requiring a full conversation every time. Health and well-being. How are you feeling these days? Or are you taking care of yourself? Are common, caring questions, especially with older family members.
For example, how are you feeling these days, Grandma?
Oh, not bad for my age. Just the usual aches, but I'm getting by just fine.
Good to hear. Make sure you're resting enough too.
Right. This kind of gentle, caring exchange is such a natural, common part of family conversations, especially with older relatives.
It's also worth mentioning with health topics specifically, it helps to ask open, caring questions without being overly intrusive. How are you managing tends to feel warmer and less clinical than what exactly did the doctor say.
Daily life updates. What's new with you? Or how's work been treating you? Invite general updates about someone's daily life and routine.
For example, so what's new with you lately?
Not much, honestly. Just settling into a new routine at work. What about you? Anything exciting happening?
Not really, but I did start a new hobby recently, actually. Painting. Right, these small, casual updates are exactly what keeps family members feeling in touch with each other's everyday lives.
And it helps to ask a genuine follow-up question, too. Oh, painting, that's wonderful. What made you want to try that? Shows real interest rather than just politely acknowledging the update and moving on. Upcoming plans or events. Any plans for the holidays? Or are you coming to the family gathering next month? Help coordinate and stay connected around shared family events.
For example, are you coming to the family gathering next month?
I'm planning on it, yes. I wouldn't miss it. Are you bringing anything?
I was thinking of bringing dessert if that works.
Right. This kind of practical, warm coordination is such a normal part of staying connected around shared family events.
And if scheduling gets complicated, phrases like, let's find a date that works for everyone, or I'll check my calendar and get back to you, help keep the coordination smooth and low stress, even with a large extended family.
Reminiscing about the past. Do you remember when, or tell me about when you were younger? Invite storytelling and connection through shared or individual memories.
For example, do you remember when we used to spend summers at the lake house?
Of course, those were some of my favorite memories growing up. I still think about them sometimes.
Me too. We should plan another trip like that sometime.
Right. Reminiscing like this often naturally leads to warm, meaningful conversations, and sometimes even new plans together. Here's another lovely conversation area worth covering: family traditions, since these often come up naturally in family conversations, especially around holidays and gatherings.
Right. Useful phrases here include, what traditions did your family have growing up? Or do you still celebrate this the same way you used to?
Exactly. And these questions often open up wonderful, detailed stories, especially with older relatives who remember traditions from even earlier generations.
We could also say, I'd love to start a new tradition. Maybe we could, when suggesting something new for the family to consider together.
Right, and it's worth mentioning hand down, meaning to pass something, like a tradition or object, from one generation to the next. This recipe has been handed down for 3 generations.
Traditions really do seem to create such a strong, warm thread of connection across generations, and talking about them, both preserving old ones and creating new ones, is such a meaningful part of family conversation.
Exactly, and even something as simple as asking, how did this tradition start, can lead to some of the richest, most memorable family conversations you'll ever have.
Since Anna's story touched on this too, let's spend a bit more time on staying connected with family members who live far away, since this is such a common situation for a lot of our listeners.
Right. Useful phrases here include, let's set up a regular call, maybe every Sunday, which helps create a consistent, predictable rhythm for staying connected, rather than relying on catching up whenever it happens to work out.
Exactly. And sharing small, everyday moments, not just big news, can help long-distance family relationships feel closer too. I just wanted to share this small thing that happened today. Even about something minor helps maintain a sense of everyday closeness.
Right, and sending photos or short videos of daily life, a nice meal, a walk, a pet, can help bridge the distance in a warm, simple way too, giving family members a small window into your everyday life.
I also think it's worth mentioning time zones specifically. Being thoughtful and flexible about scheduling calls across different time zones shows real care and effort. Something like, "I know it's late for you. Thank you for making time," acknowledges that effort directly.
Right, and honestly, long-distance family relationships, while requiring a bit more intentional effort, can still feel just as warm and close as relationships with family members who live nearby, especially with consistent, thoughtful communication.
Let's talk about something that comes up constantly in family conversations too, giving and receiving advice, since family members feel comfortable, sometimes a little too comfortable, offering their opinions.
Right. When giving advice, it helps to ask first whether it's actually wanted. Do you want my honest opinion, or do you just need to vent right now? This simple question respects the other person's actual needs in that moment.
Exactly. Sometimes people just want to be heard, not necessarily fixed, and asking this question directly avoids the common frustration of unwanted advice.
And when receiving unwanted advice, phrases like, "I appreciate you caring, but I think I've got this one," or "Thanks for the suggestion, I'll definitely think about it," gently decline advice without dismissing the person's good intentions.
Right, and it's worth remembering most unwanted family advice comes from a place of genuine care, even when it doesn't feel helpful in the moment. So responding with a little patience and gratitude, even while declining it, usually keeps the relationship warm.
Exactly. And if you do want to give advice yourself, framing it gently, "Have you considered?" or "Something that helped me was," rather than a direct command, tends to be much better received within family relationships.
Let's talk about expressing difficult emotions within family conversations too, something that can feel especially vulnerable given how close family relationships usually are.
Right. Phrases like, "I've been feeling a little overwhelmed lately and I wanted to share that with you," open up an honest, vulnerable conversation without requiring the other person to immediately fix anything.
Exactly. And "I'm not looking for solutions right now, I just need to talk," clearly sets the expectation for the kind of support you're hoping for in that moment.
Right, and on the listening side, phrases like, "That sounds really hard, thank you for telling me," validate the other person's feelings without immediately jumping to advice or minimizing what they're going through.
I think it's also worth mentioning to open up, meaning to share personal feelings or experiences honestly. "It took me a while, but I finally opened up to my brother about how I was feeling."
Right, and family relationships, precisely because of their closeness and history, are often exactly the place where this kind of emotional openness matters most, even though it can feel more vulnerable than sharing with, say, a casual friend.
Here's another area worth mentioning: family conversations about family roles and expectations, since these sometimes create quiet tension if never directly addressed.
Right. Useful phrases here include, "I feel like there's an expectation that I always... Can we talk about that?" which gently opens a conversation about an unspoken family role or assumption.
Exactly. And "I want to help, but I also need to make sure I'm not overextending myself," honestly communicates a limit around a family role or responsibility without completely refusing to help at all.
Right, and it's worth mentioning unspoken expectation, meaning an assumption about someone's role or behavior that's never been directly discussed. "There was an unspoken expectation that I'd always host the holidays."
Exactly, and bringing these unspoken expectations into open, honest conversation, even if it feels a little uncomfortable at first, often leads to a healthier, more balanced distribution of family roles and responsibilities going forward.
Money is another topic that often feels a little sensitive within family conversations, whether it's about lending, gifts, inheritance, or shared expenses.
Right. Useful phrases here include, I want to be upfront about this. I'm not in a position to lend money right now, which is direct but kind, clearly communicating a limit without unnecessary guilt or lengthy justification.
Exactly. And for discussing shared expenses, something like, should we split this evenly or does it make more sense to divide it differently, opens a practical, non-confrontational conversation about money matters.
Right, and it's worth mentioning financial boundary, meaning a limit set specifically around money matters within a relationship. I've had to set a financial boundary with a family member before, and it felt hard but necessary.
Exactly. And money conversations, while sometimes uncomfortable, tend to go much more smoothly with clear, honest, calm communication, rather than avoidance, which often leads to bigger misunderstandings or resentment later. I also want to talk about something worth considering. Family conversations often happen across quite different generations, and adjusting your approach can really help.
Right. With older generations, like grandparents, conversations often benefit from a slower pace, more patience, and sometimes repeating or rephrasing things gently if needed.
Exactly, and it also helps to ask about their experiences and history, since older generations often have wonderful, rich stories that they genuinely enjoy sharing, especially when someone shows real interest.
Right. With younger generations, like children or teenagers, conversations often benefit from genuine curiosity about their specific interests, rather than only asking generic questions like, how's school?
Exactly. Something like, what's the most interesting thing you learned this week? Or asking specifically about their hobbies or friends tends to invite much richer responses than a generic question.
Exactly. And with teenagers specifically, giving them space to share at their pace without too much pressure or too many questions at once often works better than an intense, rapid-fire conversation.
Exactly. Patience really does seem to be the common thread across generational differences. Patience with older relatives' pace, and patience with younger relatives' space.
I also think it's worth mentioning technology specifically, since it often creates a real generational gap in family conversations. Older relatives sometimes struggling with video calls or messaging apps, which can unintentionally reduce how often you connect.
Right, and being patient and willing to help walk an older relative through a new piece of technology, step by step, without frustration, can genuinely open up whole new ways of staying connected that weren't possible before.
Exactly. I remember helping my own grandfather set up video calls for the first time, and even though it took a few tries, the excitement on his face once he could finally see his grandchildren on a screen made every bit of that patience completely worth it.
That's such a lovely example, small technical patience leading to a genuinely meaningful new way of connecting across generations.
Let's talk about family gatherings specifically too, holidays, reunions, celebrations, since these bring their own unique conversational challenges and opportunities.
Right. Gatherings often involve talking to a lot of different relatives, some close, some more distant, all in a fairly short amount of time, which can feel a little overwhelming.
Exactly, and useful phrases here include, it's so good to see you, it's been a while, or I've been meaning to catch up, tell me what's new. Both work as warm, easy openers with relatives you don't see often.
Right, and if conversation feels a little repetitive at gatherings, since the same basic questions often get asked repeatedly, how's work, how's the family, it can help to prepare one or two more specific, interesting topics in advance.
That's such a practical tip. Having something specific ready, like a recent trip, a new hobby, or an interesting article you read, can make gathering conversations feel less repetitive and more genuinely engaging.
Right, and it's also worth mentioning that gatherings sometimes involve navigating a few slightly repetitive or overly personal questions too, especially from more distant relatives. Things like, so, when are you getting married? Or any kids yet? Right, and having a light, prepared response ready can help. Something like, still figuring things out, but I'll definitely let you know when there's news, delivered with a smile tends to gently close that topic without feeling rude or defensive.
Exactly. Having a go-to phrase ready in advance for these common, slightly intrusive questions can really reduce the stress of gatherings, since you won't feel caught off guard in the moment.
Let's talk about something a little more challenging too, setting boundaries within family conversations, since family relationships sometimes require this more than other relationships. Right. Useful phrases here include, I love you, but I'm not comfortable talking about that right now, which respectfully declines a topic without rejecting the relationship itself. Exactly. And I need a little space around this topic for now is another gentle way to set a boundary, especially around sensitive or repeatedly difficult subjects. Right, and for boundaries around time or availability, something like, I can't talk long right now, but can we catch up properly this weekend, respects your own needs while still showing genuine care for staying connected. I also think it helps to remember setting a boundary doesn't require a long explanation or justification. A simple, clear, kind statement is usually enough without over-explaining or apologizing excessively. Right. Over-explaining can sometimes actually invite more pushback or debate, whereas a calm, simple boundary, stated clearly, tends to be respected more easily. And finally, it's worth acknowledging that some family members might not respond perfectly to a new boundary right away, especially if old patterns have existed for a long time. But staying consistent, calmly and kindly over time usually helps establish healthier patterns eventually. Right, and it's completely normal to feel a little guilty the first few times you set a boundary with family, especially if you're not used to doing so. But that guilt usually fades as you see the positive results of clearer, healthier communication. Exactly, and it's worth remembering a boundary set with love and respect actually tends to strengthen a family relationship over time rather than damage it, since it creates a more honest, sustainable foundation for the relationship going forward. Let's talk about slightly more sensitive family topics too, since these come up sometimes and having the right language really helps. Right, this connects nicely to our disagreement episode too, since sensitive family topics often require some of those same polite, careful techniques. Right, and family conversations around sensitive topics, health concerns, financial matters, relationship changes, or major life decisions often carry extra emotional weight simply because family relationships matter so deeply to us. Exactly. Phrases like, I want to talk about something, is now a good time, help create space for a more serious conversation, rather than bringing something heavy unexpectedly. Right. And I know this might be a hard topic, but I think it's important we talk about it. Acknowledges the sensitivity directly, which can actually make the conversation feel safer for everyone involved. We might also say, I hear you and I understand your concern, but I feel differently when navigating an actual disagreement within a family conversation. I also think it helps to choose timing carefully, bringing up something sensitive during a calm, private moment, rather than during a busy family gathering or a stressful time, tends to lead to a much more productive conversation. Right, and it's worth remembering that sensitive family conversations don't always need to be fully resolved in just one conversation either. Let's keep talking about this, or can we revisit this another time, are both completely valid ways to pause a difficult topic without abandoning it entirely. Exactly. Sometimes the most respectful thing is allowing a sensitive topic to unfold gradually over multiple conversations, rather than expecting complete resolution immediately. Let's clear up a few common myths about family conversations before continuing. Myth 1. A close family never has awkward or difficult conversations. Actually, even the closest families have their share of difficult, sometimes awkward conversations. It's a normal part of any long-term, deeply connected relationship. Right, closeness doesn't mean the absence of difficulty. It often just means having the tools and trust to work through that difficulty together. Myth 2. If I disagree with a family member, it means I don't respect or love them. As we discussed in our disagreement episode, honest disagreement, delivered kindly, is actually a sign of a genuine, honest relationship, not a lack of love or respect. Myth 3. Family conversations should always feel completely natural and easy, without any real effort. Just like friendships, meaningful family connection, especially with busy adult schedules, often requires some intentional effort, checking in regularly, asking good questions, making time. Right, effort doesn't mean the relationship isn't genuine. It actually often reflects how much you value keeping that relationship strong and connected. And myth 4, one more worth mentioning. Older family members can't really understand or relate to modern topics. While generational differences are real, genuine curiosity and patience often reveal that older relatives can relate more than expected, especially when topics are explained with care and without judgment. Right, and honestly, a lot of older relatives appreciate being included in modern conversations too, even if it takes a little extra explanation. Being asked and included often matters just as much as fully understanding every detail. Exactly. And myth 5, a final one, family conversations should never involve any negative emotions. Actually, healthy family relationships allow room for the full range of emotions, frustration, sadness, disagreement, as well as joy and warmth, rather than only ever presenting a cheerful, positive front. Right, suppressing genuine emotions to maintain a falsely cheerful family dynamic often creates more distance over time, rather than the closeness it's meant to protect. We received a lovely message from a listener connecting to today's topic. Oh, tell us. She said her family speaks a different language at home, and she used to worry that her English wasn't good enough to properly explain her feelings to English-speaking family members who had moved abroad. That's such a specific, relatable challenge for multilingual families. Right, and she said learning some simple, honest phrases like, "I want to explain this properly, please be patient with me," actually helped her family understand and support her, rather than feeling frustrated by any language gaps. That's such a great example of how simply naming the challenge honestly can actually make communication easier rather than harder. We also received a second story from a listener who wanted to set a healthier boundary with a family member who frequently called at inconvenient times but felt guilty about addressing it. Oh, that's such a common, relatable struggle. Right, she said she eventually used a simple, kind boundary phrase, something like, "I love our calls, but evenings are a bit hard for me. Could we plan calls for weekends instead?" That's such a clear, respectful way to set a boundary without rejecting the relationship at all. Exactly, and she said her family member responded really well, actually appreciating the clarity, since previously she had just felt vaguely resentful without ever expressing the actual issue clearly. That's such a valuable lesson. Unspoken frustration often causes more strain on a relationship than a clearly, kindly communicated boundary ever would.
Right, and she mentioned their calls actually became more enjoyable afterward, since they now happened at a time when she could be fully present, rather than distracted or slightly resentful.
We got a question. What if my family conversations always turn into arguments, even about small things?
That's such an honest, common concern. Sometimes this happens because of long-standing patterns or unresolved history, which is worth acknowledging rather than ignoring.
Right, and using some of the polite disagreement phrases from our previous episode, along with clearly choosing calmer moments for more sensitive topics, can genuinely help shift these patterns over time.
I also think it helps to notice if there's a specific recurring topic that tends to trigger arguments, and if so, consciously deciding whether that particular topic is truly worth revisiting right now, or whether it might be healthier to set it aside for a while, similar to the picking your battles idea from our disagreement episode.
Right, and if arguments happen constantly across almost every topic, that might be a sign of some deeper tension or unresolved issue in the relationship, which could benefit from a calmer, dedicated dedicated conversation specifically about the pattern itself, rather than the individual disagreements as they come up.
Exactly. Something like, I've noticed our conversations turn into arguments a lot lately. Can we talk about that directly? Addresses the pattern itself, rather than just each individual disagreement as it comes up. How have you been? It feels like it's been a while.
I want to talk about something. Is now a good time?
Tell me about when you were younger. I'd love to hear more.
I understand your concern, but I see it a little differently.
Any plans for the holidays this year?
Let's also try a couple of slightly longer sentences.
I love our calls, but could we plan them for the weekend instead of evenings?
I know this might be a hard topic, but I think it's important we talk about it.
It's so good to see you. It's been a while. Tell me what's new.
Try saying one of these sentences out loud today, maybe in a real conversation with a family member this week.
And a couple more useful ones. Do you want my honest opinion, or do you just need to vent right now?
I've been feeling a little overwhelmed lately, and I wanted to share that with you.
What traditions did your family have growing up? I'd love to hear about them.
Let's review a few useful words from today's episode.
First, sibling, meaning a brother or sister.
For example, I have 3 siblings.
Next, extended family, meaning relatives beyond your immediate household.
For example, our extended family gets together every summer.
We also used to check in, meaning to reach out to see how someone is doing.
For example, I try to check in with my parents every week.
And finally, to reminisce, meaning to talk fondly about past memories.
For example, we spent the evening reminiscing about our childhood.
One more useful phrase, close-knit, meaning very connected and supportive as a family.
For example, we're a close-knit family, always there for each other.
And boundary, meaning a limit you set to protect your own comfort or well-being in a relationship.
For example, I set a small boundary about phone calls after work hours.
Try using 1 or 2 of these words today, maybe in a comment describing your own family.
One more useful phrase, to open up, meaning to share personal feelings or experiences honestly.
For example, it took time, but I finally opened up to my family about how I was feeling.
And hand down, meaning to pass something, like a tradition or object, from one generation to the next.
For example, this recipe has been handed down for 3 generations. We covered common family vocabulary, including sibling, extended family, in-laws, and step-parent.
We shared our own stories, Jake's career conversation with his parents, and my experience deepening conversations with my grandmother.
We covered everyday family conversation topics, checking in, health, daily updates, plans, and reminiscing.
We talked about navigating sensitive family topics with care and respect.
And we shared a wonderful listener story about communicating honestly across language gaps within a family.
We also covered talking across different generations, navigating family gatherings, setting healthy boundaries with family, family traditions, staying connected with long-distance family, giving and receiving family advice, talking about difficult emotions, family roles and expectations, talking about money within family, and common myths about family conversations, along with a second listener story about setting a boundary around call timing.
Before we close, one last small tip. This week, try asking one family member a more specific, curious question than usual, instead of a generic, "How are you?"
Right. Maybe ask about a memory, a specific interest, or something new happening in their life, similar to what I did with my grandmother.
Small, genuine curiosity really can transform even a routine family conversation into something more meaningful.
And if there's an unspoken expectation or a small boundary you've been meaning to address with a family member, maybe this week is a gentle opportunity to bring it up too, calmly and kindly, using some of today's phrases. Next time, we're going to talk about something a little different: how to talk about your job in English, useful vocabulary and phrases for describing your work naturally in conversation.
That connects nicely to today's episode too, since "what do you do" or "how's work" are such common questions in both family and everyday conversations.
We're really looking forward to that one.
If you enjoyed this episode, like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments who in your family will you reach out to this week.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.